All right, it's time to discuss this Hunter Biden laptop story, which many in the media, including myself, felt like when this story broke just weeks before the 2020 presidential election was just sort of the right's smear campaign of Joe Biden, and probably was something that was just cooked up by someone who, you know, the Trump children seemed kind of shady, so they needed to make the Biden children seem kind of shady. That's what we thought at the time, right? And the media jumped 2 feet into the pool that told us that the Biden laptop story was cooked up by Russia in order to give disinformation to voters who otherwise would vote for Hunter Biden. Here's a headline at the time that said this was Russian disinformation. Hundreds of people say this. Don't pay attention to it. They're just trying to smear the Biden camp. Well, now the New York Times is admitting that the Hunter Biden laptop and the expose of his emails is authentic. At the time, of course, Rudy Giuliani was not helpful. He acted kind of unhinged. It made the story seem so kind of crooked and cooked. But the New York Times admits that the emails taken from this laptop were authenticated by the recipients of those emails. So what they did is they took the emails and they went to the people they were sent to and say, do you have a recipient copy of this? Those people said yes. This was corroborated by other people close to the ongoing FBI investigation, which is a reminder for all of us that there is an ongoing FBI investigation of Hunter Biden. And now the New York Times says that, we used the sort of same burden of truth that we use for other things, such as the Snowden expose documents, and we believe that those things are true.
So specifically that way, so Glenn Greenwald, who of course was responsible for getting the information out about Edward Snowden, yesterday reported that the New York Times used the same level of checks and balances now to confirm that the emails and everything were accurate, the same that they used to confirm that the Edward Snowden documents were accurate and authentic. So now the New York Times admitting, and I love this New York, because New York Post was the first to break this story, finally fit to print. You know, that's the New York Times catchphrase, right? All news that's the news that's fit to print, right? So now it's like, finally, it's fit to print. We confirmed this a long time ago. So Miranda Devine, who wrote a book on this, she was the reporter who wrote the story, right? She was on Fox last night and talked about how, well, we didn't need the New York Times to like confirm this for us. Like,
well, some of us did, though. That's the thing, is that I was one of these who was kind of like, no, click off of that. I don't want to see that. That just seems like it's crazy. I don't want to hear anything about it. The story was that he left it at a Delaware repair shop, and then it fell into the hands of some
it seemed of convenient.
The wrong people. It just seemed too crazy. So I admit that I felt like, oh, this is just like, come on. We don't need a Hunter Biden to match the Trump children. I don't want to see it.
So cognitive dissonance, basically.
Sure, absolutely. That's what that was. So, okay, she can say we didn't need that, but I did.
So here's what Miranda Devine says.
This 16 months ago. You didn't need the great New York Times to tell you that it was true, right, and that they'd authenticated the emails. We already did that. And we published truth, the stories that were real, and have continued to do so without fear or favor. But unfortunately, the New York Times readers have been kept in the dark by their newspaper, their organ of choice. And that was for deliberate reasons. It was because they wanted Donald Trump to lose the 2020 election. So all journalistic ethics and standards went out the window. And it doesn't matter how you try and dress it up now and pretend that you just found out, even if you didn't have the laptop, as you know, because you interviewed Tony Bobulinski at the time, he was a patriot, a hero who stood up against his own interests to tell the world the truth about Joe Biden and about his influence peddling, the way he abused his power to make money from foreign countries at the expense of America's national interest. And we're now reaping the spoils of that.
And so you might have fallen victim to the propaganda, like, you know, because what happened right after that New York Post story broke, right? We covered it. I think we covered it here on the show. before you were a part of the show back then, but we covered the story, and I couldn't believe, like, Twitter took it down. Like, Twitter
Yes.
blocked it. We covered, Dave, I think you remember, David, we covered the story. Twitter blocked the story.
Facebook suppressed it.
Facebook suppressed it.
Biden was actually out there saying that it was Russian misinformation. Like they had a huge campaign to paint it.
So
as
you
that.
might have fallen, we might have, people might have fallen, and you might have fallen victim to it. Other people fell victim to it. The mainstream media certainly fell right in line with it. And that's exactly what happened at the time. And even Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary at the time, came out and said, Hunter Biden's story is Russia disinformation. Dozens of former intel officials say. Like she literally tweeted this. And so yesterday she was asked this very question about whether or not she would now want to retract that or change her tune on that. Here's what she had to say.
And if I may, you asked about Hunter Biden's laptop. You also, in October 2020, dismissed it as Russian disinformation. Do you stand by that assessment?
Again, I'd point you to the Department of Justice and Hunter Biden's representatives. I'm a spokesperson for the United States. He doesn't work for the United States.
Oh, okay, that's convenient then. So, but he, you work for the United States here too. So I don't understand. Like, what's the difference, right? So you can certainly go out and tweet a fact check Politico story, which is total garbage, which comes from U.S. intel sources, right? This is the hilarious part of this, is that these fact checkers who work for Politico and Washington Post, they are disinformation agents by blood. They work for intelligence agencies. They either work former CIA, former FBI, doesn't matter. That is their job, is to lie. And that's exactly what they do. And so if you're a fact checker who is a former intel official, are we supposed to believe you?
Right.
Your whole career is lies, as Mike Pompeo explained.
And, to the New York Times credit, they did not repeat the information that this was a Russian disinformation campaign. They said at the time they do not have any sources to confirm that. They printed it and said we can't confirm it. So they still sort of left it out in the ether. But then how could Jen Psaki at the time
Well,
do
because
that?
Politico had a fact checker. So yes, as Glenn Greenwald pointed out yesterday in his piece, to the New York Times credit, at the time, they did not say it was Russian disinformation. They did not claim it and so forth. But other media did.
And the
Jen
damning
Psaki-
information here is what? Is that he was offering up access to his father.
Oh, here I have
At
here's
the
one
time,
here's one
right?
email example.
Okay.
Right? Here's an email example from Vadim Pozharsky, right? Sending this to Hunter Biden. Dear Hunter, thank you for inviting me to DC and giving an opportunity to meet your father and spend time together. It's reality and honor and pleasure. As we spoke yesterday evening, would be great to meet today for a quick coffee. What do you think? I could come to your office somewhere around noon or so, best on my way to airport.
So these were
Vadim.
people that were paying him.
Yeah.
He was receiving money and offering up
to
access.
the tune of about $80,000 a month.
$80,000 a month is what's being reported. So this is still under investigation. So it's worth noting, right? That doesn't mean the FBI, sure, investigates plenty of things that don't lead to anywhere. But if this investigation is ongoing and these are against rules of access to politicians, then this is worth looking at in a way that is very uncomfortable for those of us who sort of swallowed the Russian disinformation.
Well, because remember,
Bait.
this ties everything back to buying favor with Ukraine. The Ukraine, which we're in a thing with right now, this was like a precursor to that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so why should we care? We should, you might say, oh, it's just Hunter Biden. Why should we care? Western media lied to you. The United States government lied
Censored you.
Censored you, kept you from knowing this information. Again, this is
Punished people who felt like it was relevant. Yeah.
And I come back
There
to
were
Caitlin
Twitter
Johnstone.
accounts suspended over that.
The awesome power of U.S. propaganda, right? When Twitter blocked it, you couldn't share it. You couldn't share it on Facebook. They had called before the Congress about it. And then, Twitter basically apologized for it. Jack Dorsey said, we had some things that got flagged and we wish we wouldn't have done that. But now the damage was done.
Yes.
Right now, people didn't
Well,
get
the
to
election happened, right? So there absolutely might have been voters who felt differently about casting their vote in favor of Joe Biden based on this story if it was real. maybe, right? So you could construe that as election meddling.
Yeah, and
Well,
why?
and-
And why? You have to ask yourself the broader question: why? Is it because, as a number of reporters have suggested, that Trump was pulling us out, like was pulling us, drawing us down in Afghanistan, was talking, slamming intelligence community, right? Slamming the intelligence community on a repeated basis, both the FBI and the CIA, for getting us into these wars, wanting to pull back on the amount of money that these intelligence agencies had. So what incentive would these intelligence agencies, these deep state
Right.
Washington, have to want to make sure that he's thrown out of office and Joe Biden gets in there, a guy who's been in Washington for 45 years?
Well, and,
It
and Mark,
doesn't take long
Mark
to
S.
figure that
brings
out.
up a good point. I'm not a fan of the Republican Party, but everyone must know that if the shoe was on the other foot, the New York Times would have tried to crush the Trump family with this story.
Yes,
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If this was on the other foot, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, think about the stories, the endless stories that have been run about the Trump children, right? I mean, there's an endless supply of stories run about the Trump children and their ties and all of the stuff that they've done.
their spouses and all of that. Sure, we don't take it easy on them at all.
Yeah.
But Hunter Biden got a big gimme with a disinformation campaign that it just was given to him. That's a big fat gift.
Meanwhile, the lawyer for the mother of Hunter Biden's child says that he expects the president's son to be indicted. Now, of course, lawyers can say things.
This
and-
is a silly story, though. This is.
Why is it silly?
It's just stupid. Like the mother, his baby mama is saying.
The
like,
lawyer for the, yeah.
Why do we care what she says, though?
It's the lawyer for the.
I just felt like that was a.
Well, you know what I find really,
Okay.
really funny about all of this is the fact that we blamed Russia and Facebook or Russia using Facebook to meddle in our election. This is legit U.S. meddling, U.S. corporations meddling in an election,
Yeah.
literally.
Yes, absolutely. It is. It is. And it is social media and American media, right? It's the thing that sent Michael Cohen to prison, right? Is suppressing information before an election.
Glenn Greenwald calls it one of the most successful disinformation campaigns in modern American electoral history, occurred in the weeks prior to the 2020 presidential election. I mean, that's exactly what this was, right? And as he says in his headline here, the media outlets which spread this lie from ex-CIA officials never retracted their pre-election falsehoods, ones used by big tech to censor reporting on the front runner.
Yeah.
You know,
But who do people blame for the election? They blame Russia.
of course. And because, again, it's been so drilled into their heads, right? And so for years, you've had Rachel Maddow on every night talking about Russia, falling in line with this. Then they have these ex-CIA and intelligence officials coming on their air. They hire these people that are on their air, feeding them this information. They must be in a back room somewhere, like laughing, you know, like these ex-CIA, these intelligence officials. They're like, man, they just believe anything.
Well, that's
Yeah.
like Pompeo when he was talking about how they lied. He was laughing about it, and people applauded.
Yeah, he's like that. We had whole courses at the CIA on lying. That's what we do. He's like, that's what we did for a living. And the audience was clapping. And he's like, hey, that's what we do. So, you know, listen to what they say. Watch what they say. Watch what they do. All right, we got more news to get to here. We're going to talk about Yemen.
Real
in
quick,
just yeah.
my grandmother says, believe none of what you hear and half of what you see.
None of what you hear and half of what you see. That's true. I like
Yeah.
that. I like that. If you like this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, we have a membership program. For the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support independent journalism just by going to morninginvest.com/join.
You get access to exclusive videos, plus the ability to join and chat with us live. We really appreciate your subscription, and you are supporting independent journalism.